Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome to the first part of this executive webinar series that we've called Digital Journey ROI Now. So what's the series all about? It's about how today's executives are driving hard revenue metrics and great experiences at every step of the customer journey. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Standard Bank Shyft to talk about how Shyft improves experiences and onboarding conversion through deep customer insights and orchestration, but more about that soon. My name is Anthony Odler, and I am your host and your admin today with support from Lisa. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm excited to get into the content. But before I introduce the speakers, the obligatory housekeeping, we have made some time for Q&A towards the end. So during the course of this discussion, if there are any questions that you would like us to try and answer, please do pop them into the Q&A. And we'll try very hard to get to them at the end. Also, telling you up front that at the end of the webinar, please take 20 seconds to tell us how we did. There'll be a short survey. It'll really help us for future. In terms of the roadmap for today, what you can expect, we're going to spend a couple of minutes looking at our basic approach for programs like this. Then we're going to look at the business challenges and the program approach at Shyft. We'll get into the results. There'll be a quick poll, and then we'll talk about what the next steps are for Shyft as we move forward. And then there'll be a Q&A towards the end. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers. First of all, we're thrilled to be joined by Arno van Helden. He's the co-founder and head of Shyft, Standard Bank. Hi, Arno.
Hi guys, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. And Michael Renzen, the co-founder and CEO of inQuba. Hi, Mike. Great. So with that, I'm going to hand over to our panelists, starting with you, Arno. Why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself as well as your award-winning app?
Great. Well, thanks. Yeah. So I'm part of the Standard Bank Group. Shyft is a platform within the Standard Bank Group. It was founded approximately 5 years ago. We had a very simple problem that we were trying to solve, and that was to simplify the foreign exchange experience for ordinary people. And what we mean by that is, 5-6 years ago, if you wanted to do anything related to foreign exchange, for example, if you wanted to just buy FX and hold FX or make an international payment into a bank account offshore, or even get a card and load foreign exchange onto a card for traveling offshore, it was pretty much a branch-led experience. You had to go to a bureau de change, fill out a lot of paperwork, stand in queues, and it was quite a terrible experience for most people. And so what we try to do was not just digitize that experience, so not just take a foreign exchange experience and put it onto a digital channel and effectively just instead of filling out a form with a pen, you're filling out a form on a channel on a mobile device or an internet banking device. But what we wanted to really do was try and reimagine what foreign exchange looked like, how people experienced it. We wanted it to be significantly easier and simpler. We wanted to take all the bureaucracy associated to foreign exchange, especially in South Africa, out, not bypass it, but automate it, digitize it, make it simpler and easier. And so that was the vision for Shyft, and we launched it back in 2017. And yeah, I think it's done quite well. It certainly was a big departure from the way most people were experiencing it. And I think that over the last 5 years, we've continued to improve the product. We've continued to change the product, add new functionality, new features. We're very fortunate to exist in an organization that has enabled us to create this platform, and I think it's doing well. We're continuing to push the envelope. We've just introduced a share trading capability on there. Yeah, and that's really it. That's the story of it. We are now seeing it become something a bit more than just a foreign exchange app. It's really becoming what we call a global app. We are rolling it out across the African continent. We've just launched it in Botswana, and we've got quite an aggressive roadmap ahead of us. And we really believe that Shyft has got the power to really help people move money significantly easier and quickly and more efficiently across borders, and in so doing, hopefully have the ability to improve a lot of people's lives, not just in South Africa, but across the continent. And that's what we're really here to do.
Arno, thanks so much for that intro. I'll do a quick intro to inQuba and also the context of the Standard Bank Shyft engagement. So particularly over the past 2 years and lockdowns and the kind of acceleration that we saw, particularly in digital, the requirements have almost accelerated where companies like Standard Bank Shyft want to get a much better handle on their journeys, and some of the tools to be able to do that in the market are useful but quite limited, and maybe not geared for enterprise type of journey. So the basic way that inQuba works is we a company, I think we 11 years old now. We specialize in customer experience management, and customer journey management is really the sharp wedge and the digital wedge of where our company is going in managing these journeys. And we'll talk a lot more about it today as to the kind of journeys that we manage. But typically these journeys are complex journeys, they're multi-channel journeys. So they may start in an app, land up in a call center. You could have an app version, an online version, and the requirement is really to understand the flow between different channels, to be able to bring in app data, online data, back-end data, which is often quite difficult with web-based tools, to be able to visualize, analyze the full customer journey. But I think what's more important, the whole impact and the way that inQuba's approach this particular problem is around dollars or rands or whatever currency you're trying to optimize. So any of these journeys, we're not trying to get a general look and feel. We're actually trying to get a really hard conversion on any of the journeys that we work with. So if it's an onboarding journey, in the case that we're going to be sharing today, or if it's a retention journey, or if it's a product usage journey. So it's a little bit about inQuba and the work that we're doing in space. So I'm going to hand back to Arno just to go through the objectives of this particular project, and to share the context before we get into the detail.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think when we started engaging with inQuba, we were looking for a very specific, solving a very specific problem, and in essence, because of the way the platform operates, and certainly in terms of our ability to onboard customers, we were looking at quite a significant growth path, and fundamental to that growth path for us is obviously the ability to onboard the customer. So how easy is it for a customer that has made the decision and taken the step to download the app? How easy is it for that customer to then go through a KYC process, and specifically a digital KYC process in this example, which is absolutely fundamental before one can actually serve the customer, certainly from a foreign exchange perspective. So what was that experience like? And given our ambition to start scaling the product quite rapidly, was the existing experience conducive to enabling customers to get onto and registered and onboarded onto the platform, was it where it needed to be? Because obviously, if you're going to be spending significant amount of money in marketing and advertising, but you've got a 50% drop off, you are, due to either the experience or an issue or whatever that may be, you're gonna waste a lot of money. And so you need to get to as high a successful onboarding rates as possible. And so we really wanted to understand two things. Fundamentally, number one, what was the customer's experience in terms of the onboarding process? How did the customer perceive the onboarding process? Was it unnecessarily complicated? Was it cumbersome and therefore just exhausted the customer to the point that the customer wasn't prepared to move forward with it? And were there perhaps unknowns, technical challenges or issues that might have also been preventing the customer from completing the onboarding process? And so with the engagement with and then thirdly, there's a third point is what could one then do to assist the customer and effectively handhold the customer through the process in order to ensure that the onboarding was as successful as possible. And so, in our engagement, we understood and we began to understand that the inQuba process could assist us first and foremost in really understanding the path that the customer undertook and really starting to identify in very granular detail where customers were potentially struggling, where customers were dropping off, where customers were just simply not progressing to the next step. And then further to that, create and provide the ability to re-engage with the customer and potentially bring that customer, facilitate the process from a communication perspective with the customer to the end, or bring the customer back into the fold should the customer have dropped off at some point in time. So that was really those were the primary objectives of the engagement with inQuba.
Thanks, Arno. So what I'd like to share before handing back to you to go through the specifics of the project or the journey is just a broad approach that inQuba's developed, and the methodology and the technology really work hand in hand to be able to achieve the specific outcome. One of the core briefing requirements from Standard Bank, even more broadly before we engaged with Shyft, is the requirement for being able to run a customer experience program, but to be able to do it with data as opposed to traditional voice of the customer or CX type of measures or methodology. So the first thing that we do, and we call that step one of the 5-step methodology, is to discover what the actual journeys look like. So the rendering in the background or in the slide over here is this is kind of what the journey actually looks like, and Arno will point to the actual journey. But I'll just run through this quickly so that everyone is on the same page. So where does the data come from? The data can come from multiple kinds of environments. inQuba has a rich set of capabilities to be able to bring in this particular data. In this particular engagement, it came from the Adobe environment. Similarly, if a customer is a Google shop, then it would come using Google Tag Manager. Adobe also brings in a lot of the back end and process data, so not just the front end data. And what we're able to do is we're able to render this. So this particular rendering, the way it renders is it self-renders. In the project, we actually map these points. So for example, sign up, you've got a registration. Well, this is the sign up journey, registration. You can have an idle user. The platform would mark people at a particular point after time. Let's say it's a few seconds or minutes, or it could be slightly longer if there's a process like ID validation, scanning. And the point that we're trying to get the user to is that endpoint with successful onboarding. So that's step one. The thickness of the line shows the number of customers or prospects that are moving through that particular route. And obviously the thicker lines are the ones that we are more interested in. So what the platform does is actually we can mark a point. We can mark a point as a goal point, as an idle point, as a neutral point, or as a drop-off point. And we then move to step two, which is voice of the customer. And in this particular implementation, we got feedback from the customers at these drop-off points. We used the email channel, and we organized that feedback. It looks very different to a VOC or CX program. These are actually chats, and we organize the chats into themes. The theme could be a functional theme, symbolic, which is brand or experience, or economic, which is around, well, what does the price look like, or experience would be it's too difficult to move past that point. Symbolic is something to do with brand, and functional is maybe as people are going through it, there's a feature or function that they think they would like that isn't there, and they lose interest or they don't understand and they drop off. And we organize the chats into those particular themes, and that is the way that we bring that through. Once we've got the chat data, the voice of the customer data, we've got the customer data, and we've got the journey data, we then move into analytics, and there's a range of analytics that can be a best path that the customers went through, or the worst path. And then if we click on a particular goal point, it shows the actual drop-offs, and it shows the sub-goals that people had to get to those particular drop-offs, and we can click on them to be able to see what the particular cohorts were saying about that particular drop-off point. Step 4 is what Arno was talking about, going into intervention strategies. And the reason that we're getting the kinds of results with Journey is that the insight and the orchestration are tightly coupled, and it's really laser focused and granular around the things that we're able to do. So in any of these particular paths, once we got to that particular path and we see a drop off, we can see a particular cohort and we know why that cohort dropped off, and then we can offer them a very targeted engagement at that particular place, or orchestration. So this term of conversational commerce is definitely highly topical, and this is exactly how we do it. So at that point, we say, well, we want to send an engagement to a current customer or future customer, and we are then able to target these engagements. And we can serve them via multiple channels. In this case, we use email. There was discussion around using WhatsApp as a channel going forward. And we also have the ability to break out to a call center agent, which we did use during this particular engagement. So these are examples of the nudges, and you can see the kind of detail that we can serve up. For example, high-level home, we noticed that it took multiple attempts to scan your ID. Please tell us what happened. This will help us improve the Shyft experience for our customers. Please click here to give us feedback. And what we started doing as we got more data, we started building out these categories. So very much like Uber Eats, if your order doesn't arrive, you build out the categories. So in this case, it says I did not have my ID with me when I started the process. I did not have the time to finish on my first attempt, and so on. So we build up these reason codes, and based on these reason codes, we can take the orchestration further, because it's a chat capability. It's not a one-off thing. So if someone says, like, for example, I did not have my ID with me, we can actually say, well, we can send a link, for example, and say, well, in the WhatsApp, we're using that channel, and say, well, when you have your ID, click here, and then we can send them a reminder to continue in the process. So I'm not going to go through the others, but it should give you a good sense. The last step is to review and optimize. So we have a number of tools, and these are increasing in sophistication as the platform we release further versions. And this is around intervention effectiveness. So in any of these particular points, we have the concept of a control group and a test group, and then we can compare those particular journeys as we go through. So we hand back to Arno now, just on the particulars around this particular journey.
Yeah, thanks. So let me take you through it. I think we have basically a three-step process. So our first step is really just a sign-up process. So that would generally just be a user that's downloaded would put in very basic information like a email address and a password, which would then effectively allow the user the first step of access to the platform. So the user could go on, they could navigate the platform, see a little bit about what it does, but not be able to transact. We had, and I want to, this is an important point because we have subsequent to this engagement, we've actually redeveloped our onboarding process, taking in a lot of the learnings that we had in the initial onboarding process and redesigning our onboarding process to make it a bit more streamlined and a bit of a better experience. But in the initial one, we had two different flows. We had I am an existing Standard Bank customer flow, and I am not an existing Standard Bank customer flow. And the reason why we did that was simply because as an existing Standard Bank customer, we already have the digital KYC information at hand. So where a customer is a Standard Bank customer, one could actually take them through a much more streamlined approach, whereby they wouldn't have to upload their existing ID documentation. We could simply take that from our existing systems and utilize that. And then there was our not a Standard Bank customer, which as you can see here was around 31% of total registrations, and that's actually increased quite significantly subsequently to this, whereby we were effectively doing a full onboarding of a full digital KYC onboarding process, which would then be selfie, ID document scanning, Department of Home Affairs check and confirmation to verify identity by the third party. And so in the first step, all we really wanted to do was ensure that we've got the customer, we have a registration, which is the first step in the process, and we can start engaging with that customer, and the customer can start engaging with the platform. Once the customer gets to a point where now they want to start transacting, we then have to obviously do the necessary KYC onboarding process, which would, as described, be your documentation, the selfie scanning, so verifying the actual individual's face against the document, as well as the Department of Home Affairs check. And it was in this process that we started identifying some of the challenges. And so, as you can see here on this flow, where you've got failed login, sign up started, password created, that was pretty simple. But as you start moving down the line, you can see here, especially around ID scanned. I don't know if anyone can see my pointer, but ID scanned over here, we were starting to see, and in fact, just before that, starting to loop back. So customers reattempting, and what we realized was effectively that there were a number of points where customers were experiencing challenges that we hadn't identified before, specifically around the ID scanning, and the piece of technology that we used requires the ID to be on a flat surface, on a colored surface with a color background, and the lighting needs was quite important in terms of the lighting in the room. And so that was using what is effectively an auto capture process. And what I mean by that is that you'd use the device's camera in order to capture an image of the ID, but it would only capture the image of the ID at a specific point. And it would automatically capture that. Now, if the camera was unable to focus and the light was unable to pick up the right amount of light, and the background was incorrect, this process would just simply not, the capture would simply not happen. And so this resulted in a lot of people then going back into the process and attempting again and again. And after 2 or 3 attempts, you would find that people would just simply drop off. And so that's where it became necessary to re-engage. But also it gave us insight into the system and where the challenges were. And so we could then go back to our partners and relook at that and say, and try and come up with solutions that would improve the reliability of that process and make it simpler for people to use it. We also had initially issues with the residential address that we picked up, which we were able to solve. We also, as part of the KYC processes within the large organization like Standard Bank, we've got we require source of income information. We require PIP declarations, and all of these things that are necessary from a compliance perspective. Just add additional friction into the system and create an environment where you just have more drop off. And so once we understood the entire value chain of the onboarding process, we were able to reconstruct that in a way that we would achieve the same outcome from a compliance perspective, but it would be significantly easier and significantly more streamlined, and a better customer experience for users that were being onboarded. And again, where we were still seeing drop off, we were able to reconnect with the customer and help facilitate that process and get customers back onto the onboarding process and handhold them through the whole thing. So you can see onboarding, certainly from a KYC perspective, is unfortunately quite complicated, but by breaking it down and understanding where the friction points are, one can redesign the system to make it more efficient and more user-friendly from a customer experience perspective.
Thanks, Arno. I'm just going to run through the results, just checking, because of timing, we may have to skip past the poll. I think in any of the journey projects, as I mentioned, we are always looking for a hard outcome as a success. And in this particular case, we managed to increase the onboarding conversion by 34%, which we think is an excellent result. As it happens for financial services, I think the baseline that the Shyft team started with is actually really good to get, I think the figure was 63% of people through registration, and then 50% of the group through onboarding is a good starting point. We have worked on other journeys, for example, the credit card acquisition journey, and we've done that with 2 banks, and the numbers there are a lot lower. So we often see conversion of 100% increase in things like credit cards, because the rates are low, sometimes 100% at multiple points in the journey. What's interesting over here is this is where we started with emails. So this is a test group, this is the control group, and you can see that it doesn't just happen instantly. As we go through these cycles and we get more information coming back from users, and we use the engagements, the nudges, the interventions, and a breakout to call center agents in this case to understand more detail around the problem, we start getting a larger and larger departure between the control group and the test group. And this is the kind of result that we would want, and the kind of result that we would be looking for. I think the other thing that we really saw that's super important is 61% decrease in customers going idle during registration. And a lot of that activity is really just through nudging customers, like you're at this particular point, you need help, this is what you need to do next, because we do have granular control over the orchestration. And we've seen that an engaged customer is a successful customer. So in summary, there are really 4 key points. Arno spoke about the 4 main points that were discovered. Not all of them could be fixed with nudges or interventions or breakout to an agent. Some, like the IDNV, required certain work on technology in this particular case. With respect to customer insights, we saw that 39% of customers needed help during onboarding. However, when we engaged them, we saw that they were far more active and likely to move forward. The next insight that we saw that is the one that I mentioned, that there was an increased engagement, not just during the course of registration, but overall. So the whole idea of engagement really does engage the customers, and we saw more than a halving of the number of customers in an idle state. And something that's nice to always see, although it's not the primary goal, is that we saw 5% increase in satisfaction amongst the customers who were successfully onboarded. And we do see this when we handhold customers, even though we're not trying to optimize NPS or CSAT, our primary goal is conversion. We always, or almost always, see an accompanying increase in customer stat. So we're going to skip over the poll. The next steps around this are really to take the program forward. Arno spoke about global onboarding, and then we've also designed an operating rhythm together with Standard Bank. So the operating rhythm of Journey is different to a CX type of program. It's far quicker, it's very dynamic, and it really is an interactive place. So we designed it in cycles. The first 4 weeks of the cycle is for analytics to understand how the journey is changing, what kind of orchestrations are required. And then the second 4 weeks of the cycle is really to go through orchestrations and to see the impact of those particular orchestrations nudges. And then we start the cycle again, and we add journeys as we move through the process. So I'm going to stop sharing over there, and Anthony's going to open up for Q&A with the last few minutes that we have.
Sure. Thanks very much, gents. That was very interesting. Just a reminder, I'm going to start working through some of the Q&A questions that have reached us through various channels. It is not too late. If you want to pop something in the Q&A thing, you can still do that. But let me start here. So I'm just going to open these questions up to both of our panelists. For this question from Julia. Thanks, Julia. I'm concerned about getting access to the customer data that we'd need for a project like this. I've had challenges previously. Is it straightforward?
No, but Arno can, maybe you want to take that away?
Nothing is ever straightforward. So let me just start with that. So I think that it depends really where the data is hosted. So you know, in a large organization, if you're requiring data over various different sets of databases, you know, in various different systems, that does present a bit of a challenge. We were lucky from a Shyft perspective in that we host pretty much all of the data ourselves, apart from 1 or 2 fundamental components of data, but we were able to find ways and mechanisms with which we could get the data. So you know, that question is really going to be very specific to your set of circumstances and your particular architecture. In our case, we house pretty much all of the data we require within our internal infrastructure, and so it wasn't too much of a problem. So yeah, so I know that's probably not the answer you were looking for, but that's the reality.
Great, thanks, Arno. From Cabello, this is very interesting. You have focused on a customer journey within an app. Our processes involve the call center as an essential step. Can you talk to this scenario?
I can't because we don't have a call center, but maybe you guys can.
I'm sure Mike can.
If you've got some experience.
The principles are identical. I think the way that customer journey management works is off transaction data. So the channel, the call center environment, depending on what product you're using, if it's Genesis or Via or any of these technologies, I have worked in the call center industry. I know these platforms, they're data-rich platforms. So the import mechanism is different. inQuba has the equivalent of it's a unified data platform to be able to pull in data from different systems, and it's very rich in what we can pull in. So it really is, we find out where that data lives, but we've got a rich set of ways of pulling in that data, and call center data does typically exist and is rich with from your vendor environment. So that's the short answer. I think it is a little bit more difficult to pull in than digital data, because digital data is often more or better laid out as a starting point. But we have run quite a few projects with the call center channel.
Great, thanks, Mike. Sorry, I just lost my window. From Cindy. Hi guys, thanks for this webinar. You mentioned something about WhatsApp, even though it wasn't used in the Shyft case. We're trying to move towards WhatsApp. Would we be able to achieve the same?
You want me to take that one, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we had a bit of an internal battle around WhatsApp. So just in terms of official communication channels, and so initially we decided to go SMS, which was suboptimal, as you know, most people, certainly in the South African context, on WhatsApp, a lot of people don't even check their SMSs anymore. So we actually did email and SMS, while we negotiated with the internal compliance areas, and luckily for us, we've now got sign off on the WhatsApp channel, and so we're actually busy implementing WhatsApp and moving off SMS. So is it possible? Absolutely, it is possible, and from my perspective, it's recommended.
Brilliant. I think we've got time for one more. This from Miles. How long does it usually take before you see results with a program like this?
Okay. So I think the question is from launch date. I think we were able to show our first results probably, patterns started emerging probably within 2 to 3 weeks, Arno, I think.
Yeah.
From launch date. I think the important thing is, once it's launched, you start seeing results and patterns very, very quickly, because the data starts to populate the journey flows. What is important is that the team that is managing the data in the run-up to the go live, that they have resources and that they have time to be able to focus on this. So I think I know within this particular project, getting that focus to take time. So the run-up was longer than anticipated, but once we had the data and we turned everything on, we were able to produce results with, well, at least insights within weeks, and the orchestration started soon after that.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Mike. I think we're going to land it there. Mike, if you wouldn't mind putting up the final slide in that deck, I think that'll be useful. I just want to say, first of all, some thank yous. Thank you to Arno. First of all, thank you, sir, for your time. Really appreciated it today. It's been incredibly interesting. The other thank you is obviously to our attendees. Thank you for taking 40 minutes out of your day today. And I just want to draw everyone's attention. Oh yes, don't forget, you might see us. You're going to see a survey pop up as soon as this is done. Please take 20 seconds. And I just want to draw your attention to the fact that this was part 1, and we've got part 2 coming up. It's not displaying on that slide for some reason, but we got part 2 coming up. Oh, there it is. The 28th of September. You're going to see something in your inboxes about that before the week is done. So be an early bird on that one. And see you at the next one. But thank you again to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you, Arno.
Thanks, guys.